What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are covering Amanda Knox, and Amanda Knox is an American author, activist, and journalist. She spent almost 4 years incarcerated in Italy after her wrongful conviction in 2007 of the murder of Meredith Kercher, a fellow exchange student with whom she shared an apartment in, dare I say this correctly, Perugia, Italy. In 2015, Knox was acquitted by the Italian Supreme Court. In 2024, an Italian appellate court upheld Knox's slander conviction for falsely accusing Patrick Lumumba of murdering Kercher. Now, I am new to this case. I know this is this was a very popular case, and it was very big. I've heard of it, but I'm learning as we go along with you guys. Since I'm covering cases every day now, I'm definitely expanding my horizon on cases that I just never saw interest in, and I'm like, holy crap, there's so many. Amanda Knox was 20 at the time of the murder. She called police after returning to her and Kercher's apartment after a night spent with her boyfriend, Rafael Solicito, and finding Kercher's bedroom door locked and blood in the bathroom. During the police interrogations that followed, the conduct of which is a matter of dispute, Knox allegedly implicated herself and her employer, Lumumba, in the murder. Initially, Knox, Solicito, and Lumumba were all arrested for Kercher's murder. A known burglar, Rudy Guide, was soon arrested after his bloody fingerprints were found on Kercher's possessions. He was convicted of murder in a fast-track trial, so for us that'd be like a speedy trial, and was sentenced to 30 years imprisonment, later reduced to 16 years. In December 2020, an Italian court ruled that Rudy could complete his term by doing community service after a murder. That's crazy. In their initial trial in 2009, Knox and Solicito were convicted and sentenced to 26 and 25 years in prison, respectively. Pre-trial publicity in Italian media, which was repeated by other media worldwide, portrayed Knox in a negative light, leading to complaints that the prosecution was using character assassination. A guilty verdict at Knox's initial trial and her 26-year sentence caused international controversy because American forensic experts thought evidence at the crime scene was incompatible with her involvement. A prolonged legal process, including a successful prosecution appeal against her acquittal at a second-level trial, continued after Knox was freed in 2011. On March 27, 2015, Italy's highest court exonerated Knox and Solicito. However, Knox's conviction for committing defamation against Lumumba, which was her employer, was upheld by all courts. On January 14, 2016, Knox was acquitted of defamation for saying she had been struck by a policewoman during the interrogation. Knox later became an author, an activist, and a journalist. Her first book, Waiting to be Heard, a memoir, became a bestseller. In 2018, she began hosting the Scarlet Letter Reports, a television series which examined the gendered nature of public shaming. Her second memoir, Free: My Search for Meaning, was published in 2025. Amanda Knox was born in July of 1987 in Seattle, Washington, the eldest of 3 daughters born to Etta Mellis, a mathematics teacher originally from Germany, and Kurt Knox, a vice president of finance for Macy's. Knox and her sisters were raised in West Seattle. Her parents were divorced when she was 10 years old. Her mother then married Chris Mellis, an information technology consultant. Knox first traveled to Italy at the age of 15. And upon reading Under the Tuscan Sun, which was given to her by her mother, she grew more interested in the country. Knox graduated from the Seattle Preparatory School in 2005 and then studied linguistics at the University of Washington. In 2007, she made the dean's list at the university. She worked at part-time jobs to fund an academic year in Italy. Relatives described the 20-year-old Knox as outgoing but unwary. Her stepfather had strong reservations about her going to Italy that year because he found her too naive. And I hate to say this, but like, your parents are normally always right. I hate for those words to come out of my mouth. Knox had come to Perugia for its universities and because it had fewer tourists than Florence, a more popular destination for foreign students. Knox lived in a 4-bedroom, ground floor apartment at Via della Pergola 7 with 3 other women. Her flatmates were Meredith Kuchar, a British exchange student, and 2 Italian trainee lawyers in their late 20s, one of whom was Filomeno Romanelli. Kuchar and Knox moved in on September 10th, 2007, respectfully meeting each other for the first time. Knox was employed part-time at a bar, Le Chic, which was owned by a Frenchman. Kuchar's English female friends saw relatively little of Knox, who preferred to socialize with Italians. Giacomo, who lived in a walk-out semi-basement apartment of the building, shared an interest in music with Kuchar and Knox and often visited their apartment. Returning home at 2 a.m. one night in mid-October, Knox, Kuchar, and Salinzi and another basement resident met at a basketball court acquaintance of the Italians, Rudy, in the basement apartment. At 4:30 a.m., Kuchar left saying that she was going to bed, and Knox followed her out. Guidi spent the rest of the night in the basement. Knox recalled a second night out with Kuchar and Salinzi, in which Guidi joined them in the basement apartment. 3 weeks before her death, Kuchar went with Knox to the Euro Chocolate Festival on October 20th. Kuchar became romantically involved with Salinzi after going to a nightclub with him as part of a small group that included Knox. Woody visited the basement later that day. On October 25th, Kuchar and Knox went to a concert where Knox met Raffaele Solicito, a 23-year-old software engineer student. Knox began spending her time at his flat, a 5-minute walk from where she lived. November 1st was a public holiday, and the Italians living in the building were away. It is believed that after watching a movie at a friend's house, Kuchar returned home around 9 p.m. that evening and was alone in the building. Just after midday on November 2nd, Knox called Kuchar's English phone, but contrary to her normal practice, the call was not answered. Knox then called her roommate Filomeno Romanelli, and in a mixture of Italian and English said that she was worried that something had happened to Kuchar because upon going to their apartment earlier that morning, Knox had noticed an open front door, blood stains including a footprint in the bathroom, and Kuchar's bedroom door locked. Knox and Solicito then went to the apartment and upon getting no answer from Kuchar, unsuccessfully tried to break in the bedroom window door, leaving it noticeably damaged. At 12:47 p.m., Knox called her mother, who advised her to contact the police. Solicito called the Italian police around 12:51 p.m. He was recorded telling them that there had been a break-in with nothing taken, and the emergency was that Kuchar's door was locked and she was not taking her calls or taking any calls to her phone, and that there were blood stains. Police telecommunications investigators arrived to inquire about an abandoned phone, which was in fact Kuchar's Italian unit. Romanelli arrived and took over, explaining the situation to the police, who were informed about Kuchar's English phone, which had been handed in as a result of its ringing when Knox called it. On discovering Kuchar's English phone had been dumped, Romanelli demanded that the policemen force Kuchar's bedroom door open, but they did not think the circumstances warranted damaging private property. The door was kicked in by a friend of Romanelli, and Kuchar's body was discovered on the floor. She had been stabbed and had died of blood loss from neck wounds. The first detectives on the scene were Detective Monica and her superior Marco. Monica conducted the initial interviews and quizzed Knox about her failure to immediately raise the alarm, which was later widely seen as During her initial questioning, Knox told authorities that Lumba had broken into the house she had shared with Kircher and other roommates before sexually assaulting and killing her. Knox said that she had spent the night of November 1st with Solicito at his flat, smoking marijuana, watching the French film Emily, and having sex. Solicito told he could not remember if Knox was with him that evening or not. According to Knox, Detective Monica had been hostile to her from the onset. Detective Marco discounted the signs of a break-in, deeming them clearly faked by the killer. The police were not told the extent of Kircher's relationship with Salensi in initial interviews. On November 4th, Detective Marco was quoted saying that someone known to Kircher might have been let into the apartment and be responsible for her murder. The same day, Guidi is believed to have left Perugia. Over the following days, Knox was repeatedly interviewed as a witness. She told police that on November 1st, she received a text from Lumumba advising that her evening waitressing shift had been canceled. So she stayed over at Solicito's apartment, only going back to the apartment she shared with Kircher on the morning the body was discovered. On the night of November 5th, Knox voluntarily went to the police station. Knox was not provided with legal counsel, as Italian law only mandates the appointment of a lawyer for someone suspected of a crime. Knox said she had requested a lawyer, but she was told it would make things worse for her. Knox testified that prior to the trial, she had spent hours maintaining her original story that she had been with Solicito at his flat all night and had no knowledge of the murder, but a group of police would not believe her. Police arrested Knox, Solicito, and Patrick Lumumba on November 6, 2007. They were taken into custody and charged with the murder. Customers who Lumumba had been serving at his bar on the night of the murder gave him an alibi, and Lumumba was released. Detective Marco, who thought the arrests were premature, dropped out of the investigation soon afterwards, leaving after his bloodstained fingerprints were found on bedding under Kircher's body. Guidi, who had fled to Germany, was extradited back to Italy. Guidi, Knox, and Solicito were then charged with committing the murder together. On November 30th, a panel of 3 judges endorsed the charges and ordered Knox and Solicito held in detention pending a trial. Knox became the subject of an unprecedented pre-trial media coverage because of leaks from the prosecution, including a best-selling Italian book whose author imagined or invented incidents that were purported to have occurred in Knox's private life. Guidi fled to Germany shortly after the murder during a November 19, 2007 Skype conversation with his friend. Guidi did not mention Knox or Solicito as being in the building on the night of the murder. Later, his account changed and he indirectly implicated them in the murder, which he denied involvement in. Guidi was arrested in Germany on November 20th and extradited to Italy on November 6th. He opted to be tried in a special fast-track procedure by Judge Micheli. He was not charged with having had a knife. He did not testify and was not questioned about his statements, which he had changed compared to what he had originally said. In October 2008, Guidi was found guilty of the sexual assault and murder of Kircher and sentenced to 30 years imprisonment. His prison sentence was ultimately reduced to 16 years. In 2008, Guidi was found guilty of a sexual assault and murder of Kircher and was sentenced to 30 years imprisonment. His prison sentence was ultimately reduced to 16 years. He was later given an early release date of December 2020 and authorized to finish his sentence with community service. Amanda Knox was dissatisfied with his early release and spoke publicly against it. In 2009, Knox and Solicito pled not guilty on charges of sexual assault, carrying a knife, simulating a burglary, and theft, 2 credit cards, and 2 mobile phones. There was no charge in relation to Kircher's missing keys to the entry door and her bedroom door. Although Guidi's trial judgment said that he had not stolen anything, there was a separate but concurrent trial of Knox with the same jury as her murder trial, in which she was accused of falsely denouncing her employer for the murder. Knox's police interrogation was deemed improper and ruled inadmissible for the murder trial. According to the prosecution, Knox's first call of November 2nd to Kircher's English phone was to ascertain if Kircher's phone had been found. And Solicito had tried to break into the bedroom door because after he and Knox locked it behind them, they realized they had left something that might incriminate them. Knox's call to her mother in Seattle 15 minutes before the discovery of the body was said by prosecutors to show Knox was acting as if something serious might have happened before the point in time when an innocent person would have such concern. A prosecution witness said Knox and Solicito were in a nearby square of the night of the murder. Prosecutors advanced a single piece of forensic evidence linking Solicito to Kircher's bedroom where the murder had taken place, fragments of his DNA on Kircher's bra clasp. Solicito's defense questioned how Solicito's DNA could have gotten on that small metal clasp of the bra, but not the fabric of the bra strap from which it was torn. How can you touch the hook without touching the cloth? The defense asked. The backstrap of the bra had multiple traces of DNA belonging to Guidi. According to the prosecution's reconstruction, Knox had attacked Kircher in her bedroom, repeatedly banged her head against a wall, forcefully held her face, and tried to strangle her. Guidi, Knox, and Solicito had removed Kircher's jeans and held her on her hands and knees while Guidi essayed her. Knox had cut Kircher with a knife before inflicting the fatal stab wound, then faked a burglary. The judge pointed and questioned Knox about a number of details, especially concerning her phone calls to her mother and Romanelli. I didn't realize this case was like this crazy. The defense suggested that Guidi was a lone killer who murdered Kircher after breaking in. Knox's lawyers pointed out that no shoe prints, clothing fibers, hair, fingerprints, skin cells, or DNA of Knox's were found on Kircher's body, clothes, handbag, or anywhere else in Kircher's bedroom. The prosecution alleged that all forensic traces in that room that could have incriminated Knox had been wiped away by her and Solicito. Knox's lawyer said it would have been impossible to selectively remove her traces and emphasize that Guidi's shoe prints, fingerprints, and DNA were found in Kircher's bedroom. It does seem like a very far stretch. Guidi's DNA was on the strap of Kircher's bra, which had been torn off. His DNA was found on a vaginal swab taken from her body. I mean, come on. Guidi's bloody palm print was on a pillow that had been placed under Kircher's hips. Guidi's DNA mixed with Kircher's on the left sleeve of her bloody sweatshirt and in bloodstains inside her shoulder bag, from which he then burglarized. He stole money, credit cards. Both sets of defense lawyers requested the judges to order independent reviews of evidence, including DNA and the compatibility of the wounds with the alleged murder weapon. The request was denied. In final pleas to the court, Solicito's lawyer described Knox as a weak and fragile girl who had been duped by the police. Knox's lawyer pointed out to text messages between Knox and Kircher as showing they had been friends. On December 5th, 2009, Knox, by then 22, was convicted on charges of faking a break-in, defamation, sexual violence, and murder. She was sentenced to 26 years imprisonment. Solicito was sentenced to 25 years. In Italy, opinion was not generally favorable towards Knox, and an Italian law professor remarked, "This is the simplest and fairest criminal trial one could possibly think of in the terms of evidence." In the United States, the verdict was widely viewed as a miscarriage of justice. American lawyers expressed concern about pretrial publicity and statements excluded from the murder case being allowed for a civil suit heard by the same jury. Knox's defense attorneys were seen by American standards as passive in the force of the prosecution's use of character assassination. Although acknowledging that Knox might have been a person of interest for the American police in similar circumstances, journalist Nina Burley, who had spent months in Perugia during the trial while researching a book on the case, said that the conviction had not been based on solid proof, and that there had been resentment toward the Knox family that amounted into an anti-Americanism. A number of U.S. experts spoke out against DNA evidence used by the prosecution. According to consultant Greg Hampkin, director of the Idaho Innocence Project, the Italian forensic police could not replicate the key result claimed to have successfully identified DNA at levels below those an American laboratory would attempt to analyze, and never supplied validation of their methods. Knox was indicted in 2010 on charges of defamation against the police for saying that she had been struck across her head during the interview in which she incriminated herself. In May 2011, Hampkin said forensic results from the crime scene pointed to Guide as the killer and to his having acted on his own. The appeal trial began November 2010 and was presided over by judges Claudio Portillo, Hellman, and Massimo Zanetti. A court-ordered review of the contested DNA evidence by independent experts noted numerous basic errors in the gathering and analysis of the evidence and concluded that no evidential trace of Kircher's DNA had been found on the alleged murder weapon, which police had found in Solicito's kitchen. The review found the forensic police examination showed evidence of multiple males' DNA fragments on the bra clasp, which had been lost on the floor for 47 days. The court-appointed expert testified the context strongly suggested contamination. On October 3rd, 2011, Knox and Solicito were found not guilty of murder. In an official statement given the grounds for the acquittals, Hellman and Knox had been confused by the interviews of obsessive duration and a language she was still learning. And forensic evidence did not support the idea that Knox and Solicito had been present at the murder. It was emphasized that Knox's first calls raised the alarm and brought the police, which made the prosecution's assertion that she had been trying to delay discovery of the body untenable. Her and Solicito's accounts failing to completely match did not constitute evidence that they had given a false alibi. Discounting the testimony as self-contradictory, the judges observed that he was a heroin addict, having noted that there was no evidence of any phone calls or texts between Knox or Solicito and Guide. The judges concluded that there was a material non-existence of evidence to support the guilty verdicts, that an association among Solicito, Knox, and Guide to commit the murders was far from probable. The false accusation conviction in relation to her employer was upheld, and Judge Hellman imposed a 3-year sentence, although this did not result in additional incarceration, being less than Knox had already served. She was immediately released, whereupon she quickly returned to Seattle. Knox wrote a letter to the Secretary General of Italy, USA Foundation, the day after regaining her freedom, to hold my hand and offer support and respect throughout the obstacles and controversy. There were Italians. There was the Italy USA Foundation and others that shared my pain and that helped me survive with hope. I am eternally grateful for their caring hospitality and courageous commitment to those that wrote me, that defended me, and that stood by me, that prayed for me. I am forever grateful for you. So there was the retrial March 26th of 2013, and forensic controversy continues, although not part of the defense's team of experts. An authority of the forensic use of DNA, Professor Peter Gill, publicly said that case against Knox and Solicito was misconceived because they had legitimate excuse for their DNA being present at Solicito's kitchen knife and in the crime scene apartment. According to Gill, the DNA fragments from Solicito on the bra clasp could have gotten there from Solicito having touched the handle of Kircher's door while trying to force it, enabling transfer to his DNA class. DNA is crazy. It's just DNA from me to something can get there so easily, and I think that's what people don't realize. They'll hear, "Oh, that DNA was found there," and it's like, yeah. So after returning to the United States in late 2011, Amanda Knox completed her degree and worked on a book about her case. She was often followed by paparazzi. Her family incurred large debts from the years of supporting her in Italy. That'd just be so scary. Going to a different country to study abroad, or just to go live. And being falsely convicted of something and being in a different country, that's a fucking scary feeling. In 2017 interview, Knox said that she was devoting herself to writing and activism for the wrongfully accused. She hosted the Scarlet Letter Reports on Facebook Watch, a series which examined the gendered nature of public shaming. Knox also hosts a podcast, The Truth About Crime. She has been a featured speaker at fundraising events for nonprofits, including the Innocence Project. In June 2019, Knox returned to Italy as a keynote speaker at a conference on criminal justice, where she was a part of a panel titled Trial by Media. On February 29, 2020, Knox married author Christopher Robinson, who is connected to the Robinson newspapers, owner of the West Side Seattle newspaper. They had first met at Knox's return to Seattle in 2011 and announced their engagement in 2019. In October 2021 interview with the New York Times, Knox announced the first birth of her child, a daughter who had been born several months prior. In September 2023, Knox gave birth to her second child. There are many documentaries, many TV shows, many, I think there's movies and books based on this, and a whole herd of information on this case.
The 26 years in prison before being acquitted. This is a story of Amanda Knox.
It was, a woman did it.
And it became sexualized.
I tre sotto l'influsso dello stupefacente, in un pesante gioco sessuale.
Meredith era mia amica e non la odiavo.
I think if you went back to Italy right now, you could ask anyone, say, yeah, she's a killer.
Cognome KN. Sì. Qualcuno è praticamente entrato in casa sfondando la finestra.
Un attimo.
It's November 2nd, 2007, in Perugia, a city in central Italy. On the first floor of this building, the police make a gruesome discovery.
E ci sono fuori dalla porta di questa coinquilina che non c'è delle macchie di sangue.
Del bagno ci sono delle macchie di sangue.
Meredith Kircher, a 21-year-old British student, is found dead in her bedroom. Her body has been stabbed 47 times and had a gaping wound to the throat. Her American roommate, Amanda, and her Italian boyfriend, Raffaele, were the ones who called the police.
She met this guy, Raffaele Sollecito. She literally had met him like 7 days before this crime occurred. And he was a big hash head. So there was a lot of smoking hash and they were high all the time.
The couple claimed to have spent the night of the murder together at Raffaele's house. Amanda says she returned the next day to her apartment and discovered bloodstains in the bathroom that she shared with Meredith.
She'd seen there was some blood on the towel or the bath mat in the bathroom. Nobody was there, and she'd had a shower and then she'd gone back to Raffaele.
Rimangono le scelte di fare una doccia in una casa completamente aperta dove ci sono delle tracce di sangue, non sono comportamenti del tutto ordinari.
As they talked about it, she thought it felt a bit unusual, and they tried to call Meredith.
Questa ragazza avete un cellulare?
Sì, abbiamo cercato di chiamarla, ma non risponde da nessuna parte.
Then they called the police, and when the police arrived, then they broke down the door to Meredith's room, and that's when the body was discovered.
Amanda Knox was 20. She came from a broken home in Seattle and acting in a way that, let's say, Italian girls of that age don't, sex, drugs, doing yoga exercises in the police station after the roommate was murdered. She quickly attracted the attention of the prosecutor.
The reason that Amanda Knox was in the frame was purely on the basis of the theories from the local prosecutor, McNeely. McNeely's theory was first, and then after that, it was a case of then trying to find any piece of evidence which will then come into that. He said that Meredith's body, had been covered with a duvet. As he told me when I interviewed him, this was really clear to him. He said that the woman must have been involved because only a woman would cover the body of another woman.
A clue is discovered that backs up Prosecutor Manini's suspicions. The police claimed to have discovered a knife at Raffaele's home with Meredith's DNA on the blade and Amanda's DNA on the handle. A few weeks after the start of the investigation, a piece of Meredith's bra, which she was wearing on the day of her death, is found at the crime scene. It has Raffaele's DNA on it. The Italian, British, and American media go into a frenzy.
This was such a sensational case. It became like a soccer game or something, like the three national interests.
That it became sexualized, that it became a circus of speculation. Her nickname was Foxy Knoxy. It was totally distasteful. It had nothing to do with the death of Meredith Kircher. It had nothing to do with looking for justice.
Under intense questioning, Amanda accuses Patrick Lumumba, the owner of the bar where she works, of killing her roommate. She retracts her statement shortly after.
Perché non ero sicura quale fosse la mia immaginazione e quale era la realtà.
At the crime scene, investigators find DNA traces belonging to Rudi Guede, a young Ivorian man arrested in Germany. During his trial, he claims his innocence and accuses Amanda Knox.
Ho avuto modo di, guardando attraverso la finestra, di vedere la sagoma di Amanda Knox.
2 years after the murder, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solicito are on the defendant's bench. Prosecutor Manini accuses them of killing Meredith Kircher as part of a macabre sex game.
I tre, sotto l'influsso dello stupefacente e verosimilmente anche dei fumi dell'alcol, decidono di porre in atto il progetto di coinvolgere Metz in un pesante gioco sessuale.
Meredith era mia amica e non la odiavo. L'idea di vendicarmi su una persona che è sempre stata gentile con me è assurdo.
Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solicito are respectively sentenced to 26 and 25 years in prison.
It was a witch trial, and the prosecutor was a very, very religious man, like hardcore religious. The focus immediately was on this photogenic woman, and whose presence on the crime scene instantly provoked this prosecutor's traditional superstitions.
So I traveled to Perugia and interviewed him. But he struck me immediately as somebody who was not interested in reason and logic and following the evidence. I just got a feeling of somebody who was detached from reality.
Prosecutors said Knox's DNA was found on the knife's handle, while the victim's DNA was found on the blade.
The knife was found at Raphael's house, where Amanda spent loads of time, so obviously it would have her fingerprints on it. And the DNA which was found on the blade was so scant and unreliable. There's no proof to say that that was Meredith's DNA at all. But importantly, the knife was too big. It didn't match the injuries that she had on herself, on the body.
Tutto questo lavoro che è stato costruito facendo una serie di errori, non un errore, una serie di errori.
But you could see images, video images of various people from different elements of the Italian authorities walking into the crime scene. There's a video footage of them and just smashing the glass on the door and kicking it in order to try and get in. It's not light touch professionalism that you'd imagine to see in other places. It was quite clear that everything was contaminated. So anything that they collected from that crime scene was of very, very little use. Apart from a bloody footprint which entirely matched the size and shoes that were worn by Rudi Guede.
Months before the murders, the summer before the murders, he was actually doing home break-ins, burglarizing what he thought were empty offices and houses. In his first conversation that they taped, Rudi Guede says Amanda had nothing to do with it. As soon as he got back to Perugia, he started putting her in.
Ho avuto modo di, guardando attraverso la finestra, di vedere la sagoma di Amanda Knox.
You don't need to have a law degree to understand what was going on there. When they understood that he was involved, they didn't turn the ship around. They just continued on, and they did because there were 20 TV trucks in the piazza, and they could not get up in front of them and say, we made a giant mistake here.
È un processo purtroppo con una pressione mediatica inaccettabile.
After 4 years in an Italian prison, Amanda Knox is acquitted of the murder of Meredith Kircher. So is her former boyfriend, Raffaele Solicito. Outside the courthouse, an angry crowd expresses their outrage.
I think if you went back to Italy right now, you could ask anyone. I'll say, yeah, she's a killer. They got her out.
We now respectfully ask you to give Amanda and the rest of our family our privacy that we need to recover from this horrible ordeal. Thank you.
Meg has been almost forgotten in all of it. The media photos aren't really of her. There's not a lot about what actually happened in the beginning. So it's very difficult to kind of keep her memory alive.
In 2014, Amanda and Raffaele are once again convicted. Amanda is sentenced to 28 years in prison, a sentence even heavier than the first one. But the following year, they are both acquitted definitively.
Ora voglio soltanto tornare a vivere e dimenticare tutto quello che di brutto mi è capitato.
Rudy Gaday is now the only person convicted for the murder of Meredith. He was released from prison in 2021 and still claims his innocence.
Ero una furba, psicopatica, sporca e drogata puttana, colpevole fine a prova contrario. Perché nella corte dell'opinione pubblica tu non sei una persona umana, sei un oggetto da consumare.
That is all I have for you guys today. If you made it this far, make sure you hit that like button. It helps me out more than you know. And if you like this kind of content, I am making new content every day for every single day of July. So make sure to subscribe if you aren't, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.